give you a magazine, a sheet of paper, a pair of scissors, and a glue stick, and ask you to create an image of a blonde woman who wears a blue baseball cap, has a hair tie on her right wrist, who squints her eyes and follows the line with her finger, and bobs her head to music. What would your image of the described look like? This is an image of her. This is another one. That's her also. These are images of some student work from my course, Divergent Thinking. We meet once a week in a conventional classroom, but what we do in my classroom is very unconventional. Each week we focus on a non-engineering field, creative writing, theater, drawing, and we emulate some of the commonly used thinking and doing processes in those fields. Writing a 6-word memoir, looking at a photograph projected on the screen for 15 seconds, and making a quick sketch within the next 15 seconds until another photograph is projected. Splitting into teams of 3, identifying a subject, an actor, and a coach, and coaching the actor to walk like the subject. Each of these tasks are new to my students. Thinking is unfamiliar, doing is uncomfortable. Their minds and their bodies have to work so hard and differently. But I encourage them to say yes. I encourage them to open themselves up to new experiences. Because saying yes and opening up myself to new experiences have fundamentally transformed my ways of thinking and doing. It was the year that my mom was about to turn 40. One day, she sent my dad off to work. She looked at herself in the mirror in the hallway of our apartment. She touched her face, and she said, "Oh gosh, I'm almost 40. Look at these wrinkles." To the child I was then, the gesture of her hands, the sound of her voice, and the expression on her face signaled a traumatic experience. About 30 years later, as an industrial engineer whose mission in life is to design systems for efficiency, I wondered if I could engineer my experience of turning 40 into a less traumatic one. I decided to celebrate my 40th birthday in as many ways as I can. First, I decided to throw a big party on the day before so that when the clock ticked my birthday, I would be laughing and dancing. Second, to extend the celebration, I decided to give myself a gift a day for 40 consecutive days. And to prolong the celebration to the entire year, I decided to say yes to everything during the following year. The party was fabulous. I ended up with 3 birthday cakes. Giving gifts to myself for 40 days was absolutely amazing because I got everything I wanted. But little did I know at the time, saying yes to everything during the following year would be fundamentally transformative. AS took me to Istanbul, Turkey to an art workshop. The first day I walked into the classroom, one of the participants had already started to make a drawing. I peered over his shoulder. On the page was a real drawing of Istanbul, of the cityscape outside. It looked nothing like the random set of marks that I make when I feel like drawing. I was in an unfamiliar territory. I was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. I asked myself, what was I thinking when I signed up for this workshop? But I was there, so I pressed on. To close off the workshop, we had a show. Once all the work was hung, I was amazed to see the evolution of my work. And I realized if I stayed with something new and repeatedly kept experimenting with it, unfamiliar became familiar. I was so intrigued. So after that workshop, I decided to go to each and every art opening in Gainesville. I started reading books on art history. I engaged in conversations with artists. I had encountered a new tribe. They had a secret language. Their ways of thinking and doing were so different, and I just wanted to learn. Another yes took me to a meeting. After the meeting, a professor of dance sent an email to the entire group saying that she wanted to start her new project and wanted to see if anyone would want to collaborate. Of course, what did I do? It was that year. I said yes, another yes. So we meet. I ask her what her project is about enthusiastically. She just shrugs her shoulders and she says, I don't know. This is not how I collaborate. Because in my world, I have a project that I want to work on. I realize that there's a piece of it that I cannot solve. So I reach out to an expert in the field. And if I can spark some interest, we collaborate. That's how collaboration is supposed to happen. But what was happening was not that. Again, I found myself in an unfamiliar territory. I was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. I said to myself, what was I thinking when I hit that reply button? But I was there, so we kept talking. At one point, she decided to show me one of her pieces. And in her piece, the dancers were moving on a grid. In that work, I saw my search algorithms looking for the optimal solution on the grid. We had made a connection, so we pressed on. Next semester, as I watched her students perform the piece that she choreographed, I was amazed to see the patterns of my search algorithm in it. I realized that once I found a way to deal with my discomfort and stayed with the new, again, unfamiliar became familiar. Again, I was intrigued, and I had encountered a new tribe. So after that, I started going to each and every dance performance on UF campus. I started reading books on dance choreography, biographies of dancers. At the age of 42, I walked into my first ever ballet class. I had a new tribe. Their ways of thinking were so different, and I just wanted to learn. I guess by now, you're starting to see the pattern that's beginning to emerge. Each yes put me in an uncomfortable, unfamiliar experience. Each yes shoved me to an uncomfortable place. But each yes introduced me to a new tribe. Each yes forced me to learn to communicate with that tribe and eventually learn their secret language. Each yes led me to learn their ways of thinking and doing. But most importantly, each yes led me to question my own ways of doing and thinking. Soon I began to diverge in my classroom practice in engineering. I started asking my students, I asked them to write poetry on engineering topics. I asked them to develop interpretive dances to tell the story of their senior design projects. I asked them to draw mind maps before the exam so that their learning would be improved. And of course, I started to get a favorite existentialist question. Why do we have to do this? The tasks were not difficult for them. They were unfamiliar, they were uncomfortable. And the problem was that there was not a right answer to converge to or a wrong answer to avoid. They just had to work differently, they had to think differently. So I encouraged my students to say yes. I invited them to open themselves up to new experiences. When I did this, I realized that I was beginning to challenge the way we teach engineering traditionally. The way we teach is there's a problem, it has a solution, and we teach our students how to converge to that solution. Only in their senior design project or in graduate school, we ask them to diverge, to think outside of the box. But you can learn to think divergently. But just by saying yes to new experiences, by opening yourself up to new experiences, by cultivating a curiosity towards other fields, by learning ways of thinking and ways of doing in other fields, and bringing those learnings back to your own field to modify your own ways of doing and thinking. Because I believe our brains are fascinating. Once you show them how and give them the freedom to do so, to think divergently, the ideas they come up are brilliant. And I believe one of those ideas in its kernel has the inspiration to solve some of the most challenging problems we face today. So I invite you to say yes. I encourage you to throw yourself into unfamiliar experiences. And I invite you to be uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.